You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hi, this is a very special episode for Nurture Your Zest. I am so excited to be back recording and filming again after a small break, having just had the most beautiful little baby girl. And I have to say, motherhood is a whole journey in itself. And I'm so excited because in the meantime, since recording, I have hired an incredible new colleague, Samantha Castro, who is actually a filmmaker and a podcast host in her own right. So we're here today chatting about some previous Nurture Zest episodes that really meant a lot to me and I found inspiring that I wanted to look back on. We're just going to have a chat today thinking about International Women's Day. So I want to share this amazing colleague of mine with you. So hi, Samantha. Great to see you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today about all things International Women's.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And also, we spend a lot of time making other people's content. So it's nice to be making content again, right?
Very much so. I'm nodding very heavily.
Yeah. So I know lots about you. I also know that my listeners know quite a bit about me. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am originally from Texas, if you can't tell by my accent, but I married a Geordie man, so now I live here. And I have been in love with podcasts for years and years now, and have the availability and opportunity to make inspiring and unique and different content in kind of a narrative format. I love narrative podcasts, but I also love podcasts that I can listen to and engage with and learn from. And so when I found you guys, well, actually, you found me on LinkedIn, but when I found you guys, I was like, it aligns so well with what I love to do and what I love to help people do, which is to just get their voices out there and heard. Because not only do I, make content for film and television, but I also make content through a community filmmaking group that I run called Newcastle Film Club. So yeah, a little bit about me. Don't want to make it all about me because I know you have some amazing clips lined up for us to listen to today.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to share those clips with everyone and look back actually. And I think it's really important what you were saying there about making content that, matters and shining the light on different stories, because that's one of the things we're so excited to work with you on, where it's a big part of our strategy going forward for Nurture Your Zest for our studio, Flamingo Heights Podcast Studio. So there's loads we could talk about all day.
Yeah.
We're going to look back at season 1 today, at 3 specific women that we wanted to focus on. So we're going to be looking at Muzoon Almellehan, who is a refugee from Syria, and we'll go a little bit into her. We're going to look at a lady called Lysa Morrison, who is a powerhouse, tiny person with big stature, big power. And we're also going to look at somebody called Michelle Jones, who uses her kindness for good. So I think those 3 people I've chosen for very specific reasons. International Women's Day is something I've always wanted to create content for, but I think it's a tricky one because how can we create content that isn't tokenistic? So yeah, I think that's something for us to think about. So just thinking about female founders, one of the themes of International Women's Day this year is actually to talk about investing in women. And it's funny that there's something called the Rose Report or the Rose Review, and it looked at how women are supported by investors, or how they can seek investment or gain investment. It's interesting that the United Nations have chosen the Invest in Women kind of theme or focus this year. And there's also another organization that hold the rights or the name for International Women's Day, and they're talking about inspiring inclusion. So I think how we inspire inclusion is important as well. I wanted to say before we dive into these clips, it's so weird looking back and listening to myself at that time. I think that I feel like my podcast was very wholesome and very much about sharing stories that mattered and creating impact. And it's reminded me, having taken a little break away, what I love and what the goal was and the focus was and what I want to return to. So it's given me a little bit of a I don't know, a lift, having listened to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's always important for when you're what we said earlier, when you're creating content for others, to look back at the content that you created for yourself, and
Yeah,
kind of going back to your why you created and why you started to begin with. And
yeah,
you've done a lot of amazing and creative stuff, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to come and work here. But yeah, I think it's really important to take some time sometimes to reflect on some of the stuff that we've done in the past, and
yeah,
how that can help shape where we're going to go now for the future
yeah.
as well.
Exactly. So I think looking at our first person, let's start with Lysa Morrison. So Lysa is someone that I first heard about, I'd seen all over kind of LinkedIn when I was working at Newcastle University, and I went to a TEDx Newcastle University event. It was the first one I went to, 2018. And I saw this woman and she did a talk, and it was all about personality and how we interact with stuff around us in the room. And the crazy thing is, I didn't know, but 10 minutes before, she'd been asked if she could speak because one of the speakers couldn't make it. And she
No.
literally just created some slides, stood up, and did a TEDx talk.
That amount of confidence is what I aspire to be.
Exactly. But now, thinking of that, she is tiny. So she's like, I don't know how many foot, but she is small, vibrant, just creative, just such a force to be reckoned with. And so I was watching her from the outside in when I did my master's in business administration at Newcastle University, and I first started Nurture Your Zest. I was thinking, well, who do I want to interview? What do I want the show to be about? And originally it was just going to be about MBA,
Mm.
so a master's in business administration stuff. And then it somehow became Nurture Your Zest. So I was so grateful to interview her. And I ask every guest, what is the number one word to nurture your zest? So
Yeah.
that element of your zest for life, the thing that gets you out of bed. And Lisa's was Wonder Woman. And I loved that. So she has since then done all kinds of things. But I think we should go and listen to some of those clips now and then reflect on them before I tell you what she's doing now.
Amazing.
So one of the things that Lysa talks about is how women aren't very kind to ourselves. So she
Mm.
coaches men and women, and she does incredible work with business leaders and executives globally. She'll go and train people in Poland or Spain or all over the world, and she has various senior lecturer positions. But I find that, you know, she speaks a lot of sense from her heart and knows what women are like to themselves. This is one of the bits I wanted to play. One of the things you spoke about was being one of the youngest ever female non-executive directors. And I want to know more about that because I'm really interested in women in leadership. So as one of the youngest ever women in that situation, how old were you and what was your experience?
Gosh, can't remember exactly how old I was. I was certainly in my mid-20s. I had been working at British Airways. I left school, got a job. Been working at British Airways for many years, had 2 children, and got postnatal depression. And it was during that period that I have this belief: what can you do for yourself? It's tough, but what can you do to make a difference? Did some volunteering. And I ended up being approached to contribute to being a non-executive director of Newcastle PCT. Didn't have a degree. I lived in a council house at the time, single parent. I'm 5'1", short, blonde. I'm probably everything that everybody looks at and is stereotypically not anybody that they kind of go, oh, that this professional person could contribute something in this really important work.
So I thought that was really interesting. Looking back at, she had this, time where she was really depressed, really down. I resonate with her at the moment, having just given birth. I wouldn't say I'm feeling postnatal depression, but I'm sure missing my team, missing projects. There is this thing about women feeling invisible after giving birth, or whether or not you have children. There is this kind of gap for women around 40 to 60 where they just feel they disappear with menopause and all kinds of other activities and things that come up for women. And this is what we see in our studio when we're working with some of our clients or our hosts we work with. They don't always have the confidence to get their message out.
Yeah.
But Lisa's talking there about, what can she do with how she's feeling? So she decided to go and volunteer and use her feelings and channel that into something. And I think that's something any woman can do that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the powerfulness of that as well too is just kind of hearing where she was at, and identifying that she was living in the place in the council house where she was living, and kind of like feeling all of the feelings that comes with postnatal depression, and she still didn't let that stop her from getting out and trying to do something more, and I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, she speaks there about stereotypes, but I mean, you just said what a powerhouse to go and do a TEDx talk
Mm,
in 10 minutes with no preparation. I mean, gosh, that is ballsy, right?
yeah,
It
really
takes
is.
huge courage. But I think to push through class and status and all these silly labels that we put on ourselves, sometimes it can be so constricting. And I think making something about being bigger than yourself is something that I really look up to Lysa for. And just one of the things she talks about in this episode, and we can link this in the show notes for anyone who wants to listen to the full episode, but she talks about the power of how we talk to ourselves,
Mm.
and I think that's really important. She also spoke a lot about sexism in that episode, so I want to play another clip. She doesn't particularly talk about the sexism here, but she talks more about that kind of you are this level or you are this person and those labels we put on ourselves.
Yeah, let's have a listen.
I remember going to a conference in Peterborough somewhere, and there was all these older gentlemen, very well-spoken, solicitors, all these different professions, and me. And they spent the entire time going, "Why are you here? What are your qualifications? I don't understand. How are you? How old are you? What qualifications do you have? What is your profession?" And I was grilled from the moment I got there and the evening meal all the way through to the next day. And I felt so uncomfortable. It wasn't easy at all. It knocked my confidence. But I was really lucky to have another woman role model there.
Mm. So I resonate with that, because I feel like as a woman we have to work 10 times harder to be known, and to walk into a room and to be like, no, I deserve to be here because I've worked to be here, and being able to have to justify like what she was just talking about, like I understand that, especially within the film and TV world as well too. It has been a male dominated kind of atmosphere, just like a lot of careers that are out there. But yeah, I think that's really interesting what she was talking about right there.
It's true though. I mean, we both in the film and TV, broadcast kind of world, the amount of female producers or female artistic or creative leads, or, there is a choice. You have to make a sacrifice of taking time off for career breaks, for family breaks, for caring breaks if you
Mm.
need to, for caring reasons, for yourself to travel, for your love, to move from Texas to the UK. There's also sacrifice there in terms of what could have been in one way or another, but then you've had amazing projects you've worked on in the UK anyway. I think what Lysa said there about kind of like people questioning your experience isn't only a female issue. I think it can be related to class, it can be related to race, to faith, to
Mm.
all kinds of reasons. However, I really feel for her there because, later in the episode she talks about the power of her red lipstick and,
Yeah.
wearing a pretty dress and heels. And you'll always see her, she's always dressed so well. But it's almost like we have to wear war paint or armor to kind of challenge some of those things. And yeah, I think it's really interesting, that thing of being, well, why are you here? Who are you? And this is where I think as women we can uplift each other and we
Oh,
can
absolutely.
make room at the table,
Absolutely, absolutely, because there is more than enough room at the table for your fellow colleagues, regardless of gender. But I think also just lifting up other women for sure.
Yeah. I also think I've always felt like I never really fit in at any table, but if you make your own table, the people will come,
Yeah.
and you can kind of invite who you want to join,
Yeah.
which is super nice. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
there anyone who's ever been like a cool role model for you, that's opened doors for you or helped you along your way?
Oh, absolutely. So I have a mentor that I still mentor, friend, former colleague that I worked with for years and years, Carolyn Hart. She has been a huge mentor to me, and I think it's really important to have not only someone who's, has more years on you that you can look up to, but also to have people like younger than you as well and learn from other generations. I think having intergenerational mentorship and women that you can talk about, because they can also talk to you about what's to come in terms of health, wealth, relationship, and that kind of stuff, and be a kind of a guiding figure, but also make you question some of the stuff if it's a younger person that you're talking to as well, and
Yeah.
kind of have that intergenerational dynamic.
I think the intergenerational dynamics are really important, because listening to Lysa's clips here, we're looking at, some of the early 90s kind of experience of a very masculine, dominated environments, and actually there are more women in the workplace. But now some of the challenges for women are that there's menopause or other things that are only coming out now, really important research that we didn't have before. So I feel that just hearing her experience is kind of interesting going back. There's another little bit that she mentioned that I wanted to play, and this really spoke to me.
Who on earth am I to make a difference in this really important work? But I just kept hold of that belief that, this is tough, but I'm gonna go through it, because I'm gonna learn from this, and it's gonna make me a stronger person. And all of these kind of, once again, strange experiences that just happened to me have given me the belief. You make sure you have the belief, no matter how small, and it will build. It will get bigger and bigger and bigger until it takes you goodness where. So for me, I would say that was a very challenging time, but one I look back on and once again go, I would never be where I was today if I hadn't persevered with that.
For me, that really speaks to me, because Lysa was volunteering for this position, a very senior role, to help her with her postnatal depression, and she wanted to give back. So she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to go places where people would say, who are you? What are you doing here? What's your qualifications? So to be doing that for free kind of blows my mind, and actually it makes me think of you. So you are inspiring in the sense that you have you're the founder of the Newcastle Film Club, and that's something you do for free, and you do so much time into that, right? I mean, I know as a studio we want to support you with that, and we are already, but you spend your evenings, your weekends.
It's a lot of time that gets spent on something like that. Yeah, and so to put yourself in a volunteer position like that, and to then be challenged to say, well, why are you here? Or, what gives you the right to be here? Yeah, that is quite inspiring. What else did you like about that clip?
Well, I really like that, it's just that acceptance that things are going to be tough, but you can do it, you can push through, and that you have to kind of go through that success tax. So to be successful, there's always a tax to it.
Oh,
there's doubt.
I like that. I've actually not heard of that before.
Okay, so there is a term called success tax, which
Right.
is an economic term, which is paying tax on your success. So there's that. But then there's, these kind of leaders like Brendan Bouchard, or these kind of high profile influencers who talk about the success tax, and doubt being a success tax. So to be successful, to go to where you've never been before, you have to have courage, right? It's going to be rough. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be times you feel doubt. There's going to be times it's scary. You might not have the bank balance you expected, but you're doing something differently. So you have to kind of ride the success tax with it. And that's really spoken to me. And I feel with Lysa, she's definitely, gone through that with, this is tough, but I can do it, and where would I be now if I hadn't done that?
Yeah. I think that's what really resonated with me, is that she said, because of this, I am basically stronger, and I've learned from this experience.
It's almost like an initiation for the thing that you need to get to, right? Yeah. That's how I see it.
Huh? Sounds like a really good episode. So what's this next clip that we're going to listen to?
This is about the council estate.
I think the biggest challenge isn't what other people tell us we can or we can't do. It's what we tell ourselves that we can or we can't do. And during that experience of being a non-exec, somebody actually said to me, you do realise you're the token person. You're the token female on the board. You're the token person from a council estate. And that was actually said to me at this conference by someone. And I wasn't particularly confident, but I said, good. Because you need representation, you need a different view. And maybe I won't have the same view as you, but hopefully I can come with something different that might just inform some decisions that will impact on people like me from council estates and so on and so forth. And so that time wasn't about those predominantly men, I've got to be honest with you, telling me what I couldn't do. It was that inner fight with me that I wasn't listening to that, and that I had to overcome what I believed about myself in order to continue through it, if that makes sense. And I think we ourselves are our own worst enemy, not necessarily the messages we get from other people.
Wow. That's some serious Teflon skin to kind of let that bounce off you, you know.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are, kind of thing. Or you are the token person. I'm sure lots of people have heard that.
Or thought that. Looking at the room.
Yeah.
And seeing.
And actually, all three of the women that we're talking about today, these episodes, have, unique things that put them in a category that is different. So for Lysa, it's being from a single parent family, also living on a council estate. And now she's an investor. She has her own gin brand. She has her own business that she goes and does leadership sessions all over the world with Olympians. Wow. You know, she's pretty amazing, but she's made that for herself. Muzoon, who we'll talk about in a minute, is, you know, she's been a refugee. She's had nothing and lived in a tent in really difficult situations, and now uses her voice to help others around the world. And then Michelle, who has chronic illness and still finds the courage and the energy to fight for other people. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's what you do with the circumstances that you're given and the opportunities that you're given, because she could have stayed in that position and said, yeah, okay, but you know, what am I to do? You know, who am I to break mold and go try new things and live the life that she now leads? She could have just stayed in the token box, but she didn't, it sounds like.
Yeah, and the fact is that even with all that success, she's still giving back. She's still a senior lecturer at various universities, but still giving up her time to be a workshop facilitator for TEDx Newcastle, or even come on podcasts and be a guest, you know, giving up her time, which is awesome. So I have to say, looking back, she was a really important guest to me because she was someone I really looked up to. And at the time, she'd done a course that I was doing. So it was that mentorship, you know, aspiring to be someone. And just how honest she was about her journey really inspired me at the time. I remember being so nervous about that episode.
You didn't sound like it. There you go. Being courageous.
Yeah. So incidentally, courage is actually one of our key themes of Nurture Zest. So I guess that shows the values. I'd like to talk about Muzoon Almellehan now. So Muzoon is someone who I saw speaking at this event. It was called Martin Luther Who, and it was a student-led conference at Newcastle University, February 2017, I think. And I was so impressed because this was a student-led program of activities that they'd put together in a conference. And they'd invited Muzoon to speak. And at that age, I think she was only around 17. And I think she was still at school. And when I interviewed her, she wasn't much older. But just the power and the impact of her story. So she was a refugee, left Syria, lived in a tent for a long time. I believe she was in a refugee camp for about 3 years. But she used her voice to be an activist for women and men, so for young people to have education in the refugee camps. There's a particular clip I want to play that just talks about the sheer reality of education and the priority of it in a refugee camp. So if I play that now, we'll have a listen.
So when my dad took that decision, it was indeed the hardest decision in our life. Of course, we didn't want to flee Syria, and we have everything in Syria, our relatives, our friends, and all our memories indeed. So for me, I didn't want to leave, but we had no choice but to flee. So at that moment, my dad has asked us to bring the most important needs and the thing that we need most. So at that moment, I was thinking about what I really need and what is the thing which is so important to me. And I thought about my school books. So for me, I packed my school books for my journey to the camp. And I was so surprised that no one has taken books and all people take just clothes, games, and etc. but for me it was my school books which I took with me, and it was really difficult actually to bring the books because we had to walk like for 3 hours to get to the camp, and I was really young at that time. I was just 14 years old, and my dad actually saw me struggling to hold that bag, and he asked me, what you have brought with you? And I told him I actually have brought my school books, and he was shocked because he said, you don't need these books in the camp, and we don't know if there is a school, because he knows that my main concern was my education and my journey to the camp, because I realized once I lose my education, I would lose everything.
Once I lose my education, I would lose everything. Wow.
Isn't it interesting, that statement? It has so much impact, because how many of us take our education for granted? That is a significant
absolutely.
privilege.
Absolutely. And to I mean, just her story of just needing to pack up, what would you take in that situation?
Well, that's a really good question. Oh my gosh, what would I take? I've actually been thinking about this a lot since becoming a mum. I was like, I would take my daughter. But, there are many parents in refugee camps with their babies, going through horrendous things. I have no idea what I would take. For me, journaling is really important, and diaries, and being able to keep a story and keep a record of something. But who's to say that would even be kept? The conditions in refugee camps, the weather, the lack of space, you'd fill a diary so quickly as well.
Yeah, you would.
And you'd feel so exposed as well, your thoughts written down for anyone to see. I honestly don't even know what I'd take. Water would probably be one of my key concerns, but
I probably would take the clothes that she mentioned, but
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful that she took her school books to continue the education in such a difficult situation.
yeah. It's just interesting to me that if you have to walk 3 or 4 miles, sorry, not 3 or 4 miles somewhere, 3 or 4 hours to get somewhere. So to go from Syria to Jordan to the first camp, so she was in various camps, but just to make that journey, and you can take anything, but actually the weight of those school books, it was obviously really important to her to do that. Yeah. So she goes on in this clip. She actually went round and she went tent to tent trying to get different people, young people, children who were playing games and just kind of drawing or doing whatever, to go and become a school. So she was teaching and helping to get them interested in education, which I think is so powerful.
How old was she at this point? 14?
14.
14
Yeah.
years old, okay.
And so she's now an activist with UNICEF. She's a Goodwill ambassador. She does amazing video content that we can link to in the show notes. She's done a TEDx talk, 2, I think. But she's really had quite a powerful journey. She met Malala. She's called the Syrian Malala.
Oh.
But she's it's more her heart. She is so much about education, and for me, that's summed up in this clip here.
So when I found education, I realized I can go one day to my country stronger, and I can rebuild my homeland, which suffers. And Syria, for me and needs all the Syrians to be educated and to be powerful people to do something for Syria.
So she actually wants to empower her. She calls herself a child of Syria, and she talks about the children of Syria. But she also talks about being someone who's a child of the world, and that's why education is not just for her. She doesn't just focus on being an activist for Syrians. She actually goes all over the world and focuses on other refugees as well. But it's that hope and that education and that her faith in that dark place is incredibly powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have the utmost respect for her. I wish I could have met her.
Well, she's still in Newcastle, so we'll have to get her in. She's really a lovely girl, and she's actually graduated with her international politics degree from Newcastle University now. I think it's amazing that she was able to do that, and if she hadn't put that time and effort into her education, would she have been able to go and study? And she's still using her voice as such a powerful beacon of hope.
Yeah.
So I think for me, Muzoon has an incredible journey, incredible story. For anyone listening, I actually think it's really worth going and listening to that whole episode back. There is no video because we weren't recording on video then, but we do have some great behind the scenes pics and stuff that we're going to share in this episode. But definitely check out her videos on YouTube and the work she does. I think just the power of the theme for me this episode that we're talking about, it's in the space of darkness and struggle, having that hope and that faith and courage is really important. So she continues to amaze me, and when I did hear her speak as a teen, I just thought, wow, this is someone who's going to change the world.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to be listening to that episode when we're done with this.
So the other person I wanted to talk about, who we've already mentioned, is Michelle Jones. So if you're in the northeast of England or even further afield, you might have heard of Michelle Jones. So she is an event and wedding professional. So she's organised celebrity weddings, charity weddings, events, all kinds of things. She is so organised. She gets everything running so well, and she's got such a big, beaming, bright smile and the most beautiful blonde curls. When I first met Michelle, I just bumped into her at our friend Michael Owen's office, and I needed someone to come in for a Valentine's Day episode, and I thought, well, who better than a wedding planner, because she'll know a lot about love.
Yeah.
And in that episode we spoke mostly about weddings. We also spoke a little bit about her chronic illness. So she has had chronic illness for a very long time, since being a really young person. It affected her university. But in spite of that, she's had a career, still has a career. She's a mom, she has 2 kids, and she gives so much to her community. Over COVID, so since this episode that we're going to talk about has been recorded, she's actually been awarded a kindness bench by a school that she works with.
Oh, that's awesome.
Exactly. Imagine going and having a Michelle Jones kindness bench.
Yeah.
So that's for anyone who needs some kindness. They can go and sit there and look at the beautiful flowers, but it's actually in recognition of all of her hard work. So she's always advocating for young people, food banks, clothing drives. She does so much. One of the things, when I asked her what is the one thing that helps you nurture your zest, she said was kindness. And she's now launched Kind Currency. So
yes,
it's amazing to see someone have a value that they've been able to turn into a social enterprise. And, Chloe from our team and I went to her Kind Currency Christmas market, and it was incredible. So it was the second time I've gone. It's loads of really independent small businesses and suppliers, and the impact it will have made to them in terms of Christmas sales, but also in terms of the people and the kids involved. So there were choirs, there were dance groups, there was even a Santa fire, so a big fire and Santa, Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and kids could go and hear a story and get given a free book.
Oh, that's so lovely. It sounds really nice.
Well, it's amazing that she has all these great gifts, and she can do weddings and she can arrange things for celebrities, but also the fact that she's been able to find something that really makes a difference through one of her values, and that's why I look up to her.
Amazing. So what's this clip that we're about to listen to?
It's just her saying about kindness and it being a core value, but we may as well listen to it. Can I ask before you leave, what is your number one word that you use to nurture your zest?
Kindness.
Kindness. I thought you might say that. Okay, all right. And do you want to explain that quickly?
I have a little motto, so I live my life by a little bit of kindness makes the world sparkle, and I really believe it, because for me, if you're adding sparkle to somebody else's life, you're feeling that spark as well, and it's just that little bit of something that helps everybody, as you say, nurture their zest, their zest for life. And so it just makes the world a nicer place. And I know that sounds really corny, especially from a wedding planner, but it does. It makes the world a nicer place. And we've only got one opportunity at this life. It's not a dress rehearsal. It's the main show.
I love that.
Yeah.
I am a total, I believe in everything that what she said there, that, the kindness does make the world sparkle, and that if you put kindness out into the world, I think you do feel a little bit of that come back to you in some form of another. So yeah, love that was her word.
I love it too. So I'm thinking back to all of their words. Lisa's was Wonder Woman, Muzoon's was faith, with Michelle it was kindness, and I think for mine of that first episode it was zest, because nurture your zest.
Obviously.
It's probably still zest. But I think, this is where, if we're talking about International Women's Day, we talked as a team, do we want to run an event? Do we want to do some kind of marketing thing? Do we want to have different posts about this or that? But what did we want to do? I think we wanted to talk about content that we've created that's made a difference, but also brought us hope and inspired us. And I think that's the power of what we can do together. Together, our stories, sharing stories, creating stories, we can help inspire new generations, new groups. So I guess one of the things for us to think about with International Women's Day, I'm not really sure how I feel about these days.
There's always a day for something, isn't there?
There's International Donut Day.
That's the one that I was originally thinking about too. Yeah.
Oh, as Chloe, our colleague, loves cats, International Cat Day or
That's
whatever.
a very important one.
Yeah. I mean, I think International Women's Day is important, and it gives us an opportunity to reflect on progress and things like that. Part of the United Nations one about investing in women is to accelerate progress, because the goal was for a lot of advances in women equality by 2030. I think there's lots of issues we then negate. What about things like trans inclusion? What about other inclusion? There's so many other parts to inclusion that come in, and I think we're all becoming more aware of being more inclusive, not just being female inclusion. So it's quite a tricky day and topic,
But I think it's important to highlight where we've come and how we've gotten here, and remembering the people that we've had the privilege to speak to and be inspired by, and how they can help to shape and further, the work that these days kind of do.
But I think given what we were just saying there about maybe some of the other voices that aren't heard or aren't amplified, this is where I think the content we make now can make a difference. So although I haven't been recording for a while and I'm loving it today, it's such a weird feeling since becoming a mom. I know that the work we're producing with, say, one of the people that I find really inspiring as an international woman is, Jill Hunter from Square One Law. She has such a broad range of guests, and it's such an honor to listen to her episodes and help shape that podcast and work with her and Square One Law as a firm.
Absolutely. She has so many variety of podcast guests on her show, and she's so good in terms of having the conversations and diving deeper into their backstories and who they are and what makes them fearless. I agree, Jill's a wonderful woman to be inspired by.
So as a podcast studio or as a podcast host, what can we do to inspire and educate? And I think for us it is really bringing those stories to the world,
Absolutely.
Having conversations, chatting, and just celebrating the uniqueness in all of us.
I would agree 120% to that. And I think that's a really great place to end the International Women's Day podcast episode. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. It's so nice to be recording again. Thank you so much to anyone who's joined, and we hope to release more episodes with you soon.
We will release more episodes.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest, as well as our website and YouTube channel. If you've liked our episode today, please give us a follow or leave a review or any comments. We love reading these. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.